Was it unfair for God to allow Job to suffer over what was basically an argument between God and Satan? A surface reading of the book of Job usually evokes a reaction such as, "Why is God making a bet with the devil?" God is being unfair to Job. If we are honest and not just trying to defend God, he seems at first like some kind of cosmic ogre. God not only wagered Satan over the outcome of Job's trials, but he actually provoked the bet, as seen in Job chapters 1 and 2. To make matters worse, Job never finds out why he was afflicted in the first place. This is very disturbing for those who hope to see God as just, gracious and loving, and not just playing with us as if we were pawns on a chessboard. So, in a way, the story of Job puts God on trial. To really understand what is going on in Job, we need to evaluate how this trial is litigated in the book's argument. On the surface, when God finally testifies in Job chapters 38 to 42, the way he grills Job may seem to suggest that God is against Job rather than for him. The God speeches are notable for their deep sarcasm, as if God were simply highlighting Job's cluelessness in chapters 38 to 39. However, a deeper look reveals a more redemptive dynamic in this trial. First, Job's friend Elihu actually serves under the Holy Spirit's inspiration, both as Job's advocate before God and God's advocate before Job in chapters 32 to 37. Second, we find that God indeed did express his love to Job, both in his speeches, chapters 38 to 41, and in finally vindicating Job. God confirms that Job had spoken what was right about him, whereas his first three friends had not, as stated in chapter 42, verse 7. As Job and his friends debate God's fairness, it becomes apparent that all of them basically believe in the doctrine of retribution theology. Every act receives just punishment or reward in this present life, so we should be able to tell who is righteous or wicked by whether they are visibly blessed or cursed on earth. This is a false doctrine, but Job thought it should be true and went on the offensive, charging God with injustice and calling for a trial, as seen in Job chapters 29 to 31. Surprisingly, God condescends and agrees to be put on trial. The speeches in Job chapters 38 to 41 actually consist of God's testimony in his own defense. In the trial, we see that Job has no legal standing to convict God. Job cannot demonstrate how God runs the universe, so he cannot present any evidence of injustice, as shown in chapters 38 and 39. Also, God establishes his absolute right to act as he sees fit. As proof, he points to two creatures, Behemoth and Leviathan, that mankind has no control over whatsoever, and that answer only to God. Even before God shows up, Elihu makes the same points and argues that God is deeply redemptive in his dealings with man, in spite of man's notorious tendency towards self-destruction, as seen in chapters 32 to 37. Since God validates Elihu's points in chapters 38 to 41, the adversarial tone in God's answer to Job makes even more sense. Throughout Job's dialogue with his friends from chapters 4 to 27, and in his formal complaint to God in chapters 29 to 31, Job had assumed that God was unaware of what happened to him, or that he was deliberately persecuting him, or that Job had inadvertently sinned, and God was not willing to tell him what the problem was. Job thought he was being punished entirely out of proportion to any conceivable offense he may have committed. In fact, Job questions God incessantly throughout the dialogue. His protest climaxes in a direct indictment of God on the charge of injustice, as seen in chapters 29 through 31. So what did Job get right, 42:7? The upshot of the trial is that Job finally sees that God's governance of the universe is much more wonderful than he could have imagined, and he openly concedes this 42:2-5. So this is what Job spoke about God that was right, 42:7. Now, it is absolutely crucial to note the sequence of events at this point. It is only when Job obeys God and intercedes on behalf of his three friends, who had now become his enemies, that God actually blesses Job with a twofold inheritance, 42:8-17. This reward was not at all some kind of consolation prize for Job's unfair treatment. Rather, it was the inheritance God promises to all who serve faithfully as redemptive agents of the Creator. Daniel 12:3, Job obeyed God and was rewarded for his obedience. In the end, God's wager with Satan actually achieved an incredible coup. He harnessed evil and turned it to good, cf. Genesis 50:20. And he transformed Job into the most effective servant of all, one who took on God's own redemptive character and loved his enemies. And this, in fact, is our take-home lesson from Job.